This is a tutorial on creating visuals for your music inside Ableton Live. I'm using a suite of Max for Live devices called ZwoBot, and this video is a tutorial on a specific ZwoBot device. If you're new to ZwoBot, I'd recommend you go back and watch some of my earlier videos first, so I'll put a link to that playlist in the top right corner of the screen now. And if you want to buy ZwoBot, there's a link in the description. That'll take you to a page where you can buy the entire suite, which is all of these devices that you see here. There's around 70 of them, and they are various visual effects and also effects generators. And the suite also comes with some videos and images that you can use. The device that I'm looking at today is the Offset device. And as you can see, I've already dragged it into my project and connected it to my player, and I've imported this short video here, which is just looping back and forth. So at the moment, nothing is happening because all of the parameters are set to their default value. So nothing is changing. But if we start to change these, we'll see the effect it's having. First, over here, we have got brightness and contrast dials. Pretty self-explanatory. The contrast is going to turn up the contrast. The brightness is going to turn up the brightness. These do work differently to the contrast and brightness controls that we have over here on the player. So if I turn the contrast right up on the player, you'll see it looks different to when you turn it right up on the Offset device. And same with the brightness. If I turn it up on the player, it looks like that. If I turn it up on the Offset device, it looks like that. And then over here, we've got these shift dials. These are going to move the visual on the X and Y axes. So this one moves it horizontally on the X axis, this one moves it vertically on the Y axis. And then this button down here flips between regular and mirror, and that controls basically what happens with the video when you move it. When it's on this setting, you can see you get this mirrored effect as you're moving it, so it creates a nice smooth transition. Whereas if I change it, it flips it and it doesn't have that mirrored effect. And if I put it back to this, we've got these X and Y buttons up here, and they will flip it. So this flips it horizontally on the X axis, and this is going to flip it horizontally on the Y axis. And you can flip it on both if you choose them both as well. But when it's on this mode, they don't have any effect because it's already been flipped and you can't flip it back. So these buttons only work when you're on the regular mode. Over here, we have got Kaleidoscope and Zoom dials. So these work the same way that they do on the player. So you can see we've got them on the player as well. Kaleidoscope creates a kaleidoscope effect, just the same way as it does on the player. And these zoom dials stretch the visual. So this one stretches it horizontally, this one stretches it vertically. And again, they work exactly the same way as they do on the player. Over here, we've got size. And this, you can think of it as controlling the size of the video. You could also think of it as being like a zoom. So even though these are called zoom, they're actually just stretching the visual, whereas this is actually zooming in, and you can zoom out too. And if you double click it, it goes back to the default amount. And here we have got this grid where we can move the whole video around. Instead of having it shift and repeat, like with these ones, you can move it and you just get black, or if you had something underneath it, you'd be able to see whatever was underneath it. And this R button here will reset it back to its default position. And here you have got specific coordinates for that grid, so you can either have it move on just the X axis, and again you can double click it to get it back to its default position, or you can have it move just on the Y axis with this one. A lot of these controls, as you can see, have beat controls. I'll just switch some of those on so we can see how that works. Nothing's happening at the moment because they are going to be in sync with my master beat control, which is off at the moment. But if I turn this on and I make it a bit faster, we can see all of these controls are now randomly changing in accordance with my master beat control, which is going to be synced to the project's BPM. So I'll just play some audio. This is a track by me called Upgrade Everything, and it is taken from my recent album called Echoes of an Abandoned Future, released in March 2024 on Machine Records. So I'll put a link to that in the description below if you would be interested in listening to it. So we can see all of those dials are changing in sync with the BPM, and if I want to slow it down, I can slow this master beat control down here. So we've got these three controls here, Kaleidoscope, Zoom X and Zoom Y, and obviously they're also on the player, as I said, but on the player you can't apply a beat control to them. So that's one of the unique things about using them in this device, why you might want to use them here instead of just using the player one. They also have audio reactivity, so let's take a look at that. I can have the kaleidoscope change in accordance with the low frequencies. If I turn this on, I can control how much it changes. So if I only want it to go up a little bit, I can just... Okay, we need it to be a bit higher than that. There we go. And zoom, I could have respond to higher frequencies. So you can't do that as well on the Kaleidoscope and Zoom dials on the player. Another reason you might want to use these is if you want the kaleidoscope effect to only be applied to certain devices, for example. So let's demonstrate what I mean by that. I'm going to put in a stipple device. I'll just connect that. I'm going to put it on top of the offset device. And let's just have to weight down to the density right up. And let's put a text effect on top of it as well, this ABC one. So I'm just going to bring that in, and let's connect that here, and I'll just put some text in. And actually let's put that on top, there we go. Now if I put the kaleidoscope effect on the player, that's going to sit on top of the entire signal chain by default, so it's going to be applied to all effects here, so I can see it's applied to my text. But what if I want the kaleidoscope effect applied to the video but not the text or the stipple effect? Well, that's where we can use it with the offset device. So because I've got the offset device underneath the ABC and the stipple modules in my signal chain, when I turn this kaleidoscope effect up, it's only being applied to the video underneath, not the text or the stipple effect. So we can see that text is now unaffected. And down here in the bottom left corner of the device we have our usual transparency controls. So this controls the overall transparency of the effect. I'll just turn off these devices so we can see it a bit clearer. So if I were to turn this up and this. And then here we have a selection of blend modes that will blend the effect with the visual.